I didn't believe in the stories at first. The whisperings of the old folk, who spoke in hushed tones about creatures that walked the line between man and beast while cloaked in shadows. Skinwalkers. Just superstitions meant to scare wandering children and the occasional skeptical adult. But all of that changed the night I discovered, firsthand, that the folklore wasn't simply tales. At least not for me. It was a cold November night in Pennsylvania when it all began. The kind of cold that tapped at my skin like persistent fingers, urging me back inside. Yet, as always, I set out for my usual evening trek into the woods that flanked my family's property. I wasn't hunting or fishing. This was a sort of meditation, a way to unwind from long hours spent buried in the office grind. My boots crunched loudly over the fallen leaves, the moonlight spilling silver across the winding trail ahead. The silence held a strange allure, a thick, almost oppressive quiet that felt too perfect, too still. On that night, however, an unsettling tension crept into the atmosphere, clinging cloyingly to the air. The rhythmic hooting of the owls ceased abruptly, replaced by an eerie quiet that seemed to swallow the world whole. I shook it off, attributing the stillness to some overactive imagination. But the deeper I ventured into the woods, the more the hair on the back of my neck prickled and stood on end. Then I heard it, a low growl, rich and guttural, reverberating through the trees. The sound sent icy tendrils down my spine, freezing my limbs in place. It was unlike anything I had ever encountered, deep and primal, resonating in my very bones. I froze, heart pounding violently against my ribcage. Peering into the dim shadows, I squinted, desperate to catch any sign of movement. But the darkness was alive with whispers, echoing the growl back at me, swirling through the night, mocking my fear. A rustle of branches snapped me out of my trance, as did the soft crunch of leaves underfoot. I wasn't alone. After several moments of intense stillness, a flicker of movement caught my eye. A shadow seemed to dart past me, a mere blur, almost too fast to comprehend. I turned abruptly, and that's when I met the cold, penetrating gaze of a creature that defied reason and existence, a gaze that seeped into my very soul. It was hunched and long, cloaked in darkness that felt almost sentient. Its eyes gleamed like coals, burning with a predatory glint that ignited every survival instinct within me. I should have screamed or taken flight, but the sheer terror anchored me to the spot, like a rabbit transfixed in a wolf's unyielding stare. I stood there, spellbound as it shifted on its feet, its body moving in ways that anatomically defied earthly logic. It felt wrong. Everything about it screamed that it was something not of this world. My instinct finally kicked in, ripping me from my stupor. I turned on my heel, heart racing and legs pumping, desperate to escape. I glanced back, and inexplicably it was right behind me, no more than a few yards away, gliding effortlessly over the ground, footsteps soundless against the decaying leaves. Each breath felt like fire in my lungs, but that primal growl echoed in my mind, urging me onward with a cruel insistence. I broke through the tree line and dove into the sanctuary of my home, slamming the door shut behind me with a finality that echoed through the stillness. I leaned against it, my breath hot and heavy, heart racing angrily against my chest. Safe, I thought, though the memory of those predatory eyes lurked in the back of my mind, an indelible mark of terror. That night was just the beginning. I didn't sleep at all, nor did I find peace in the nights that followed. Every small noise outside sent prickles of dread dancing down my spine, forcing me to draw the curtains tight. I wanted to shut out the world, to bury my head under the covers and pretend I had dreamed the whole ordeal. The following days passed in a disorienting haze. I tried to rationalize what I had witnessed, but reason fell swiftly to the wayside. Gradually, my mind locked that dreadful encounter away like a childhood nightmare, until the evening calls began. At first, they were gentle, almost melodic, a haunting, beautiful hum that drifted through the darkness like an alluring mist beckoning me. I would sit in the living room late at night, the glow of the television casting flickering shadows that danced across the walls, and I would hear that sinister song veiling outside. You might think I would have called someone, a friend, a neighbor, but something deep down warned me that this solitude was a cross I had to bear alone. Then came the scratching, a soft scratch against the window that made my skin crawl, like fingernails grating against my sanity. It felt deliberate, almost taunting, as if whatever lurked outside was testing my resolve. Each time I drew a step closer, I half expected to find nothing. Yet every time I peered into the smudged glass, a pair of eyes reflected back at me. The same eyes that had probed from the dark woods just days before. One late night, screaming erupted from the woods, grotesque cries shouting through the trees like a banshee's lament. My stomach knotted, an instinctive response clawing at my insides. There was something oddly familiar about it, like a call I was inexplicably drawn to. In that moment, the old lore came crashing back into sharp focus, the eerie warnings from my childhood echoing in my mind, tales I had long dismissed as nonsense. An overwhelming compulsion gripped me then to step outside, to confront whatever this thing had become. I opened my door, the hinges creaking reluctantly, stepping out into the frigid embrace of the night. I felt inexorably drawn toward the woods, the song echoing louder now, weaving through the trees, wrapping itself around me, inviting me deeper into its dark embrace. I ventured into that suffocating darkness, the sound guiding my feet closer, closer. My heart raced not from fear, but from an insatiable curiosity, an almost desperate need to uncover the unknown. The trees loomed like watchful guardians, their gnarled branches casting sinister shadows that stirred restlessly, and yet I was not afraid. I found myself at the edge of a clearing bathed in the ethereal glow of moonlight, where the haunting chorus crescendoed into a fever pitch. There, standing before me, the creature emerged more fully, no longer a mere shadow, but flesh and bone, a grotesque embodiment of my deepest fears. Its form melded with something that felt like a twisted reflection of myself. It smiled, if you could call it that, a ghastly grin that bared rows of teeth too sharp, adorned by a face that darkened with something unsettlingly familiar. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed. It began to speak, but instead of words, I felt its voice slithering into my mind, a cacophony of intertwined dread and longing, promising power and lurking fears, a connection blurring the lines of who I was and what I might become. Time no longer existed as I stood bewildered, captive to that unholy call. All my doubts faded into the background of those known tales, warnings I had neglected. I realized I stood before something real, a manifestation of a nightmare, of unfulfilled desires and deep-seated fears, embodied in a creature that was as much a part of me as my own shadow. And then it beckoned, that smile widening until it seemed to consume the darkness around us. It wanted me to join it, to sever ties with the mundane world that tethered me. I could feel the warmth of freedom clawing at my soul, desperate to seep into me, ready to consume me. I hesitated, standing at the precipice of a choice, to flee back to ignorance or embrace the horror waiting in the wings. I backed away slowly, refusing to answer that call. The creature's smile curled into disappointment, a flicker of rage igniting in its hollow eyes. I turned and bolted through the trees, branches slicing at my skin like hungry hands, grasping to pull me back. I stumbled out of the woods, breathless and shaken, but never dared to look back. To this day, I dare not forget that knowing smile, or the creature's fateful invitation. That Skinwalker reached deep within my psyche, perhaps even into the essence of my very soul. If you've ever felt something lurking in the shadows, if you've ever heard the echoes of distorted calls in the night, then maybe you'll understand. This channel is perhaps meant for you, a haunting embrace of truth veiled in folklore. Subscribe to The Dark Witness. There are things far more sinister than mere shadows. Remember, not all tales are fiction, some are lived. And if you're listening, perhaps you too can hear the call.